Welcome to Dad Hammer, Bolters and Booze, where we discuss all things Warhammer while staying hydrated with an adult beverage. I am David the Warboss, and I'm joined by the most generic space marine in the Imperium, Mr. Medicae Steve. Steve, how we doing?
Man, I know I say this almost every episode, but I feel like I'm catching up. I think we both had a couple of really hard weeks, man.
Yeah.
And, school's back in, and I wasn't ready for that. I feel like I'm back in school.
Have you learned
Doing social.
anything? You get your homework in?
No,
No.
not a bit. Actually, I guess I had to brush up on my proportions and stuff. I was like,
Oh,
okay, sure. We'll get with that. Oh man, it's just
yeah.
too much.
Yeah, it's like it sometimes work catches up to us, and
Mm-hmm.
really what I want to do is just continue to play Warhammer, talk about Warhammer, and work and school and life. I don't want to say gets in the
Mm-hmm.
way, because that don't mean that. It's just it piles up, and I've only got so many brain cells, very few left, and what am I going to spend them on? Is what I had to focus on.
Both of mine are holding hands and wondering who has the map, and it's just
Yeah,
so bad.
but you made it. You made it.
I made it.
We're
It's good.
here.
It's fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
it's all good. Feeling good.
Uh,
Ready to talk about some nerdy stuff, and I'm excited.
yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Well, we got a great show. We're going to talk about some news regarding the upcoming Warhammer video games. There's been several on the horizon, and there's a couple of updates to some existing ones. We're going to talk about the news there, some new trailers, gameplay videos, and whatnot. We'll also discuss the upcoming Nova Open event, and the more importantly, at least to this crew here, more importantly, the preview of all the new Warhammer models and stuff for us to spend our money on. Really excited. We'll discuss what we think is going to happen, some predictions, and we'll also talk about some reviews that we've got on our website, dadhammerpodcast.com, about White Dwarf 491, the latest issue of the White Dwarf magazine. A lot of good stuff in there. And then Steve and I both have used the Goonhammer Tabletop Battles app for iPhone, Android, and we'll want to give our review and impressions on it. And then we'll round out the show with a hobby hack that Steve's found that provides a really quick and easy paint palette. And you're going to want to stick around for that because it's pretty cool, very cheap, very easy to do. Thank you so much for listening to our show. If you like what you're hearing, make sure to rate, follow, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen. And of course, you can find us on our website, dadhammerpodcast.com, and on all our social media sites, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, etc., where we have pictures of our latest projects. But first, we're going to start with the most important part of every Dad Hammer podcast, and that is, what are we drinking? And Steve, I've got a doozy, and
Yeah, you do.
it's great, but I'm going to let you go first because you've probably got the less glamorous one.
Oh yeah, it's just some bourbon on the rocks. That's all it is.
Well, that's a letdown.
It is.
Do you have it in a fancy glass, or maybe a skull chalice or something?
Well, I've got my Rick and Morty cup that with Pickle Rick on it that my wife made me.
Not exactly powerful was what I was going for. Something really, really Warhammer-esque. Pickle Rick on the front doesn't
Pickle
necessarily.
Rick.
Okay.
I mean, he's got knife hands.
Okay.
I mean, with X-Acto blades.
Yep. All right. Well, that's kind of like a mold line remover.
Sure.
We can make this
Moving on.
Well, how's your bourbon on the rock? What kind of bourbon you got?
Angel's Envy. It's the one I had opened. It's the one that aged in port wine barrels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Man, it's good. It's never a letdown. So
yeah. Well, good. All right. Well, we got that out of the way. Moving on, as you said, I've got a fantastic drink, and I cannot recommend it enough. It is the perfect summer vacation drink. As we've said before, I've made quote unquote winter drinks, and when it's 95 degrees outside, I don't care.
It's air conditioning inside.
That's right. Whatever tastes good is what we're making here. But this one is really a good tropical drink, and you may have heard of this particular drink called the GTO. And I've been recently working on. So it's a golden color, and I'll get in the ingredients
All
here in a
right.
second.
Yeah.
But been recently putting together Stormcast Eternals. I've bought a few models, probably too many, but I've got several of those that I'm putting together, and I've got the Retributor armor spray paint. Been doing a lot of gold, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought this one was appropriate because it's got a nice gold color. But even more still, because of the ingredients, and I'm going to go in the ingredients and I'll give you the name. So this is 2 ounces of bourbon, and half an ounce of amaretto, 3 ounces of pineapple juice, and a half ounce lemon juice. You put that in your shaker with ice, shake it up, and then strain it over a highball glass with ice. But the cool part is that when you pour this guy out, has like this little foam at the top, and
Mm-hmm.
it stays. It doesn't go away I'm sitting here looking at it. It has a white foam at the top and then gold on the bottom. And I think, man, if this doesn't scream just cool Stormcast Eternals, Sigmar, all of that. So I thought, the main dude with Sigmar is Sigmar Heldenhammer, and I always try to put a really dumb dad hammer joke play on words. So we're gonna go with Sigmar Heldenhammered.
I've been
I
trying not to snicker.
Yeah, I told that to my wife, and there was dead silence. I'm like,
A little eye
isn't
rolling.
yeah? And then she she waited about 10 seconds and said, um, "Good for you." All right.
Nerds.
Yeah, super nerd, but man, I tell you what, this is a wonderful drink. The pineapple really comes through. It is a wonderful tropical drink. I feel like you could garnish with a pineapple wedge if you wanted to,
Yeah.
but man,
Do you get like
delicious stuff.
do you get like a little held and hammered mustache from the foam? Like
Yeah, I mean,
sticks to your lip.
yeah, 100%. And I need an umbrella to go along with it. Maybe
Ooh, you need a hammer.
what
Put a
an
little.
umbrella instead of an umbrella, like a miniature hammer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dude.
put a hammer in the glass. Okay, that's a good
I like
idea.
it.
Yeah. Well, this is delicious. You enjoy your super lame, but nonetheless tasty bourbon on the rocks. Cheers and bottoms up, Steve.
Cheers, man.
Well, let's get into some news, and we're going to start with the world of video games. So we'll talk about some
Mm-hmm.
gaming news. There's been several games recently announced at the Gamescom convention. And if you're not familiar with Gamescom, it's just a giant nerd video game convention. And it is amazing. It sounds as amazing, and it probably is. I've never actually been to Gamescom. I've been to E3, but I've never
Oh
been to
wow.
Gamescom. Yeah, it's like a circus carnival with video games. It's amazing.
That sounds fun.
But there's specific Warhammer games that were announced, and we'll start with the first one that is probably the most, I would say, the most anticipated out of the Warhammer gaming community, and that's the follow up to the original Space Marine game, Space Marine 2. Right, big
Hmm.
title change, but it is an amazing looking game. I played the first Space Marine, and Steve, I know you did too.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
had fond memories of the original Space Marine.
Very much. It was actually I didn't when I played it, I still didn't really know a lot about Warhammer. You know, that's why I still thought all Space Marines were blue
Yeah.
at that time. So, but no, a lot of nostalgia there, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and you don't. It's if you haven't played Space Marine, it's out there on Steam. It holds up. It you
Mm-hmm.
don't. I mean, the graphics are good. They're not amazing, but they're good, and you don't really need a super powerhouse computer to play them. But the I would say the gameplay is slightly dated, but not in a bad way. It's just like, okay, I remember
No.
playing this type of game, years ago. But it's a good action shoot 'em up type of campaign going through, and really you're just an awesomely overpowerful Space Marine going against hordes of orcs and the original
Yep.
Space Marine. So the Space Marine 2 coming out later this year, and I think the date is still TBD, but later this year, it's just an enhanced version of the original Space Marine game. It looks extremely gruesome. I saw some recent videos, And I would encourage you, if you're listening to this and you've never played the original Space Marine, and you go check that out. It's a cool game, but where it really
Mhm.
shines, I think, is in the close combat and all the crazy finishing moves that you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, like ripping people's arms off. It just gets crazy during that game.
The curb stomp, and you like what, regain health the more you use your close combat stuff.
Yeah, the crazier you
Uh,
are, the more health you get.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good touch.
Yeah,
Um,
and this one in particular, Space Marine 2 is replacing the orcs for the Tyranid swarm, which is
mhm.
in line with the new Leviathan release. So, Steve, what do you think about this one?
I am, man, I'm so pumped about it. I like the idea of the cooperative play. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Um, I watched about three. I guess they sent out early release games to some big time reviewers and stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
They said it was only the first, I think the first level. So they got about an hour's worth of gameplay, which would translate to about 2 hours for me probably. But that's pretty good if you're talking like one level and an hour or so. That sounds promising.
Yeah.
But man, it looked so amazing. I like there's some really cool details spots in it that one of the reviewers pointed out. The the height difference between the Marines and the Imperial Guard guys was just like, that sets everything, and it's just so, like, they tower above them, like three
Mhm.
feet above, and you get this sense of just how big and powerful they are. And it looked like in the gameplay, even because the Imperial Guard guys are non players, they're just part of the deal, but they show them like kneeling and bowing to them because they've never seen a Space Marine probably, or
Right.
if they do, that they hold them in such high regard and reverence. So I thought that was a really neat touch. um just the voice acting is great. I think one of the main guys on Titus that's voicing Titus, I think they did a video thing on him earlier in the summer. I forget which reveal thing they were doing with him. So he's got a great voice, and I'm pretty certain that there's several Black Library audiobook voiceover
Mhm.
actors in there. So I think that's going to be great. Yeah, I am pumped. I
Yeah.
love Gears of War, and one of the reviewers said, I watched the movie World War Z, but apparently there was a video game. So it's kind of got that horde sort of feel, which the Tyranids do, and that's who's making this game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's got that you versus the oncoming swarm. Whether that in Space
Hmm.
Marine 1 it was orcs, very similar vibe. This one the same thing with updated visuals and voice acting and all those things. And really, I was just thinking, watching the video of this, that the Games Workshop really continues to hit home runs with their video games. I mean, they haven't had any major bombs, at least not in recent memory. Everything is really solid, and there's so much lore and cool, crazy stuff going on in the Warhammer universe to draw from. So,
Hmm.
excited for Space Marine 2. It is not the only game that was announced. Of course, Space Marine 2 has been announced for a while. It's just
Yeah.
more information leading up to the release. The next game they discussed was the Age of Sigmar Realms of Ruin, which is coming out November 17th to multiple platforms. And this is an action real time strategy game. So, from what I saw, it's not your typical StarCraft type game or
Okay.
Age of Empires. It's more of a zoomed in action real time strategy where you are commanding troops and groups
Okay.
of units, but it's not going to be like the Total War type games where you're zoomed out super far away and
That's
commanding
cool.
entire squads, gigantic battles. I think these are going to be a little more smaller. And
Hmm.
for those that have played games for a while, it reminds me of the old Warcraft 3 back before, I think it was before World of Warcraft, but it's more of a
Okay.
zoomed in real time strategy where you are commanding some units, but looked really cool to me. And it's got cross platform multiplayer, which is cool. So if you're playing on Xbox and you want to play against someone on PlayStation or PC, you can do that. So really cool looking campaign from what I saw, and I
Okay, that's
think
good.
Age of Sigmar just in general has a really good visual appeal in the
Mhm.
video game world. So I'm excited about this one. I'm not a great real time strategy player. I get overwhelmed easy, but
Yeah.
it is something I'm going to look into.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm a little slow on the uptake sometimes, and the couple that I have to hit the slow down button
Yep.
because I just
Yep.
can't remember I sometimes go between times playing it, and you
Hmm.
kind of forget a lot of that stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, this looks like a good game.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. And then they had a couple of updates to some existing games.
Hmm.
Darktide, which is the 40K variant of a first-person horde survival type shooter. And then there's Vermintide 2, and they've got an update to that.
Hmm.
So Darktide is the 40K variant that's coming to console. It was originally on PC. I played it on PC. It's a fun game. It's got all
It
kinds of
is fun.
40K crazy in it. But it's for me, and this is the same thing with Vermintide 2, the Necromancer update they're adding. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the horde survival type
Okay.
games where you're just waves and waves of enemies and see if you can survive. But Steve, that's not just my that's not my cup of tea
Hmm.
personally. But what about you?
I started with Vermintide too, before I knew anything about it. I think it was in White Dwarf actually. They
Yeah.
gave one of those free code things,
Mm-hmm.
so I still have the game. It's actually a lot of fun. It's holding up pretty good. It I like Darktide better,
Yeah, I agree with that.
personally.
Yeah.
It's just got, I don't know, a little bit more feel for me, but both of them, and I see what you're saying, it does get repetitive. I mean, you're really just sort of replaying the same level, replaying the same kind of shtick, just to get more loot and up your character and that kind of stuff. But
Rinse and repeat.
yeah, which is fine. I mean, it's a nice mind wipe. There's not a lot of strategy that goes into it. So it's kind of fun. I like to sit down and decompress with it every once in a while.
Yeah, I think the same applies to Space Marine 2. For me,
Hmm.
Darktide, Vermintide, Space Marine 2, Space Marine 1. Those are games where you can kind of just turn your brain off
Yeah,
and go play. Um, I remember one thing I really liked about Darktide was the music. The music and the
it's great.
sound effects was just so creepy and atmospheric. They did a really good job of making you feel like you were part of that universe. And
Hmm.
again, all of the games that Games Workshop has released recently just done a really good job of tapping into that, making you feel like you're into something special and very unique within the Warhammer space.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad they kind of waited some of this stuff for the technology to catch up. The game engines are so much better, and accessibility to high-powered either consoles or gaming computers is just
Hmm.
a lot better.
Yeah,
It feels better.
yeah, agreed. I'm excited for each of these releases, especially the Space Marine 2 one, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about them in the future. All right, let's talk now about the upcoming Nova Open. So, for those that are unfamiliar with the term Nova Open, really that's Games Workshop will host events throughout the year, and these are tournaments, where Warhammer players from around the world can come to whatever city it's in. I think this year I can't remember, is the Nova Open? There's one in Las Vegas. I don't think that's this one.
No, that's the LVO.
Yeah,
Is this the
LVO.
New
Okay.
Orleans? Is this the New Orleans one?
Uh, it might be. Well, regardless, I mean, we're
Either
not
way,
going, of course.
no,
So,
this is true.
yeah, I mean, from a casual standpoint, I'm not really big into the tournament scene.
Hmm.
But if you are, I'd highly recommend you go check that out. You could buy tickets to these events and go enter, and you don't have to be a great Warhammer player. There's a lot of people who go to these tournaments playing their first game of Warhammer. So, um, don't be afraid if it's something you're interested in. But A little late now because it's next week. So,
That's right.
but
Good luck.
if you're interested, definitely look forward in the future. But the more interesting thing, at least to me, is that anytime they have these events, these open tournaments, they always have a big news announcement where they're
Hmm.
doing what they call a Warhammer preview, and this one is upcoming. They've only really showed. This is coming up on August the 30th at 8 p.m. Central, where they'll go online on Twitch on their Warhammer channel, and it'll be two guys talking through. It's usually Nick and another guy, where they're discussing all the new stuff, and they do a nice big reveal. It's almost like the new iPhone when they show off shadows of things and then they
Right.
reveal it for the first time. Um, it's a really cool thing just to sit there and maybe paint and watch, but this one in particular, they're going to talk about Age of Sigmar, Kill Team, 40K, Horus Heresy, Old World, Warhammer Old World, and then some Underworld stuff. So these are the games that they're going to be revealing new things for.
Hmm.
Sometimes that's just a couple of models. Maybe it is a brand new box set, maybe a variation or a supplement, narrative supplement, or something like that. But all the all bets are off. Anything could be
Yeah, it could be
revealed.
anything.
Yeah, so I'll start. Steve, what do you maybe let's make some predictions and some
Uh,
hopes and dreams. What are you looking for from this preview event?
I think I'm mostly looking for the war cry stuff because I'm sure there's some stuff coming.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this last matchup they put out was a little lackluster.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the what are they, the not the grave lords, the flesh eater courts and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
It felt a little bit janky and kind of cheap. So maybe something else will be kind of coming down the way of that. Um, I'm not quite as much into Kill Team as I was. I still like it, but it to me it feels like it's struggling right now. The last
yeah.
release was basically just the kits from the last several Gallo Dark kind of releases. So it doesn't feel like there's anything new
Yeah, they came
coming
out with
out.
the extra little terrain bits for boarding actions. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it felt like.
Hmm.
the little extra. I think there was like escape pods and different things
Like
that you could put in your.
tables and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
exactly. So I
Yeah.
mean, I agree. I think Kill Team is struggling a little bit, but people still play it. So
Oh, absolutely. It's
they've
just
got.
not in our wheelhouse at the moment.
Exactly, but there's still a ton of cool stuff that's coming out. They just released, of course, me being a hardcore Votan player, they just released a Votan kill team, and
Hmm.
they looked cool, but they weren't anything that really drew my attention. It wasn't different enough from what I already have to make me want to go
Right.
get it.
They need something new. I know I pick on you about them, but I think, I mean, you have everything that's out right now and
Yep.
barely scratched 2,000 points, right?
Yeah, but that's also because I don't want to run 5 squads of bikes,
Fair
or
enough.
or
Yeah.
3 land fortresses. I just don't. Even though that might be optimized, I don't like to do that. I like the
Hmm.
variety, um, and so I'm hoping it would be cool if they would announce maybe um, some kind of mech suit um
Oh
dreadnought
yeah,
type thing for Votan. I would love to see a
that would be
dreadnought with a
perfect.
with a little bitty dwarf, in the middle,
Yeah,
almost like
in
the
a
war
baby
suit.
carrier.
Yeah, little baby
Like
Bjorn.
a little baby carrier.
Hmm. I mean, it's almost like the Invictus, the war
Yeah,
suit
absolutely.
from the Space
Yeah.
Marines. Same type of concept. I could see that
Hmm.
working, but I would love something like that, or maybe a really really big model. I'm
Or
a
some.
sucker for the big models, and they've got the Land Fortress, which is a cool tank. I wouldn't mind something more on the monster side, but I don't know if that lines up with really what Votan lore is all about.
You can do some trashy AI controlled robots or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, they the Games Workshop crew always come out with crazy stuff. So I it's hard for me to predict anything Votan related, but I'm also thinking that they're going to get more into the codex releases that are coming up
I hope
soon.
so.
Yeah, I mean, not that I don't think that the current the index material with all the detachments and stuff. I mean, there's only one detachment per army right now,
Hmm.
but I really am excited for these codex releases because they're going to add some extra flavor to each of the armies. So for those that aren't aware, the upcoming codex releases are going to have the individual books. And it's going to be similar to I think the Battle Tome stuff within Age of Sigmar, where you open it up and it'll have 5 or 6 pages specifically devoted to giving you a detachment. So if you wanted to,
Right.
going back to Votan, if I wanted to take all vehicles, or if I wanted to double down on psychers, even though I've only got one psycher, but you get the picture, right? You can
Yes.
flavor your army towards a certain type of squad, and it'll give you cool rules to go around it. So I think, Steve, they're releasing the Tyranid Codex first, and then Space Marine after that.
Okay.
So I
And then I
I
think it's
wouldn't.
Necrons
Yeah,
and probably Necrons and Dark Angels, maybe
I think so. But
something like that.
I would not be surprised for them to show off the content of the Tyranid and Space Marine
Hmm.
Codex. They'll probably show some stuff that we can expect, and then maybe give out the roadmap for when the additional releases are coming. So that's my guess on the Codex stuff.
And probably some new models along with it.
Well, I would hope
Mm,
so. I mean,
yeah, I mean that
well,
would be the most
they just showed off a ton
logical.
of Tyranid stuff. So I
Yeah, that's
I don't
true.
know. I don't
You're,
know what they would
uh,
show off. I mean, but they're every time I think that they've shown off a lot of new
mhm,
models, then they wait another month and they show off more. So
that's right.
yeah.
Well, there's the whole potential Primaris jetpack. That's been the big rumor for a
Mm-hmm.
while
Yep.
that might be coming out. Some sort of assault squad. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for new models. But then of course I've got to bring up terrain. I keep
Oh
seeing
man.
in the core rule book and different publications and artwork, even in White Dwarf, the crater terrain.
Yeah.
And I mean, that exists. It looks like somebody has made it, and it's in all these
Right.
different publications. And yes, I have some already. And yes, we could 3D print them, but I always like the official
Hmm.
stuff. I don't know. I just like it. So I would think they would come out maybe with a box set that includes the terrain, or a follow up to the Leviathan box that's similar to what they did with Ninth Edition, where they give you tons of terrain along with all the models and everything. I would love something like that to
Yeah.
show off some brand new buildings, some Gothic buildings, craters, debris. I'm really hoping for something like that. I don't know, Steve. Are you looking for anything terrain specific?
Yeah, because when we play Combat Patrol, I am woefully lacking in terrain. Half my board was the Kill Team Orc terrain,
Yeah,
and the other half was just kind of a hodgepodge of some stuff that I have, some printed stuff, uh, and I decided that I'm pushing myself toward a theme with the terrain that I want to go for a
hmm,
full 40K table, and I'm looking at more of the Sector Mechanicus kind of stuff.
yeah,
But I want to go in a direction that fits with the whole Leviathan thing, and I kind of wanted everything to look like the new Jurassic World movies
yeah.
after
Jungle.
after the dinosaurs took back over.
Yeah,
Yeah, I want the buildings to look as if they've been taken over by nature and kind of fits with that, or Tyranids have been there a while, so all their nastiness is spread about like they've
eggs and stuff.
eggs and yeah, that kind of stuff. So I
Yeah,
think, but I feel like a Mechanicus, it would look cool because their stuff is very sterile and mechanical looking, and then you add the organic stuff with it. I think that would be neat. So yeah, at this point, anything would would work for me because I need to focus on that too a little bit.
yeah. They haven't released a ton of terrain lately. I mean,
Not in a long time.
yeah, it's been a while. I mean, I remember in the beginning of Ninth Edition, they were coming out with buildings fairly regularly.
Hmm.
And then the thing about this is when I learned in Eighth Edition too. that once they release these buildings, I mean, you got to go get them, or they're
Yeah, you
gone.
do.
They they
And they
they don't come back.
no, and they doubled down in ninth on the kill team terrain. Like the kill team
Yeah,
box sets were the
there's a
ones with the
ton.
terrain in it,
Mm-hmm.
and those were the best looking terrain that they had come out with. But nothing like pointed directly for 40K and big games on the table. So
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's also on purpose because they are trying to get
yeah,
people into combat patrol, smaller games, because the larger games, while amazing and great fun, they may be daunting to new players. So I think they're going
true.
after the, hey, just spend a couple bucks here and there and get started.
Hmm.
But I am hoping for some larger terrain pieces in the upcoming preview. There is also, maybe they would show some stuff about the old world. I'm not,
Oh yeah, yeah.
right out of the just looking at all of the news bits in the past. I'm not a huge, it's not a huge interest point for me with the old world, but I do have a pretty heavy nostalgia trip for this kind of stuff because this
Hmm.
is where I originally started with Warhammer, was back in Warhammer Fantasy. I didn't dip into it.
Okay.
I didn't purchase models and paint and everything, but it's what got me interested to begin with until I figured out, oh man, this is really expensive and all the painting and the assembly. And
Hmm.
so whenever I see like the Tomb Kings and all of that,
Yeah.
I just remember that from when I first started trying to play. So I have a casual interest in the old world stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to see where it goes. I'm just more of a spectator on that one.
Yeah.
Not doubt it'd be anything I'll get into, but I think it looks cool, and I know it has a huge following. So
Hmm.
I'm happy to see people that are really interested in it, potentially getting something to suit their interest too, and that's really good. I just because it's not a win for me, I'm very happy to see it a win for someone else.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, anytime there is a preview of any kind because of an event, we always get excited.
Yeah.
It's a big deal for, at least for us, in our little circle. And whenever the videos are up, we're texting back and forth and talking about it. So really excited. If you're so inclined, stay tuned. Watch on the Warhammer Twitch channel on August the 30th at 8 p.m. Central, and we will be sure to cover the details both on our website and on future podcasts. Well, now let's talk about a couple of reviews. I wrote an article regarding the latest issue of White Dwarf, issue 491, and I continue to be a satisfied customer of White Dwarf. We've talked about that
Yeah.
many times, and the cover of this particular magazine has a really cool piece of artwork on the front with Tau. Um, our friend Lee plays Tau, and so every time
Hmm.
I see this, I'm like, oh man, there's some robots that I can shoot down. Um, you know, just
Yeah.
a little slam when I dig when I can get it in. But this issue was really cool. I wanted to point out a couple of things that I liked. They have a section on the worlds of Warhammer where it's really just an opinion piece, a narrative that they put in every single issue. And this particular one um, got me thinking because the crux of the article was around the different aspects of the hobby. Like, why do people get into Warhammer? Some people, we've discussed this before, but some people get into just the game. They just want to play the game. They don't care what the models look like. They don't care about the narrative. They don't care about the lore. They just want to play the game. And then others just get the models, paint them,
Hmm.
stick them on a shelf, and they just love it for the artwork. Other people, and I have several friends that love the video games and read the books, but care nothing for the hobby aspect or even the tabletop game because it's too
Right.
involved. And there's just so many different angles to this hobby, very unique in this space. But this particular article is something that I was starting to kind of skim through it, but I got to a point where the the author outlined those different angles, and he touched on the collector side of the hobby,
Okay.
which I'm not a pack rat. I don't just keep stuff for the sake of keeping it. It has to have a function and a purpose. But if I can find that a purpose for it, I love collecting. I'm a completionist.
Yeah.
So when I bought a shelf from IKEA for to store all of my Warhammer stuff. I know that everybody does, but I bought the big Billy bookcase for putting my models out there. And once I get a collection or an army started, I have to at least get the shelf filled up, and then I start on the next one. And if I have a single model from an army that I like, well, now I've got to go and finish it up, and I buy more. And so
This is true.
this whole article was about how to collect. And that sounds a little dumb, right? Well, obviously you know how to collect. You just go buy more models. But there's so many things, so many games, so many angles, so many models to collect that this lays out a way for you to do so without losing your mind at the same time. So,
Yeah.
Steve, when you started the collection aspect. And I know you're maybe less on the collection side than I am, but with fewer armies, is that is the collection bug ever does that ever get to you, or are you more of a practical kind of a Warhammer player?
Oh no, 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 no. The collection bug is why I have just this horrible pile of boxes to get through.
Pile of
Because one, yeah,
potential.
pile of potential.
Hmm.
Because one day it is going to be a collection, and I think part of it is that's why I'm so slow at painting, and I actually take a lot of time. Now, I'm not saying that that makes me good at it, but I feel like I want to get the most out of each one of these little guys, and it's
Hmm.
kind of frustrating because I'm way behind.
Yeah.
But to me, yeah, I want people to see them. I want people to come in my office and be like, "Dude, did you do all that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." You want to talk about it? Here we go.
Yeah.
Um, and I like that aspect of it. I don't know. I think it is neat. I had a whole bunch of stuff given to me, so I was able to sort of plow through that, and like you said, sort of a completionist kind of thing.
Hmm.
I was like, wow, those are cool units, but that doesn't really complete my army. So now
Yeah.
I need to look and see which way I want to go from there.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
the one of the things in the article that I really liked is that it gave you a bit of a strategy on how to do it, setting a goal for yourself, right? Whether
hmm
if you're just starting out, maybe you're just trying to get a combat patrol, right? It's to set reachable milestones where
right.
I'm gonna get X amount of points done, or I'm gonna get just this one box of intercessors painted, or I'm going to get this one piece of terrain painted. But setting those goals, and I just really liked reading through that because I'm a collector, and
hmm
this spoke to a side of the hobby that I hadn't really considered very much. You just kind of take it for granted. So cool article. I like the Worlds of Warhammer. They always have something different each issue. But I did want to get into the new feature, Bunker, which they've released as of last issue 490. They kind of took the rolled back the curtain on the Bunker feature, and this one it's becoming my favorite segment of the magazine.
It's great.
It's so many cool things. And Steve, what was your take on it? Was there anything that stood out for this particular issue?
I really like the new the 40K mission. I thought the way that it's nothing special necessarily, but I love the way the board is set out. Uh, you have your deployment zones, and then from the center, you just have a box, and each corner of the box is an objective point, and everybody is just rushing to the middle. It's
Hmm.
I think I can kind of see it in my head. This setting the stage for this just really really intense in close battle because each objective marker is only 18 inches apart, which probably on a board if you were to look at it that wouldn't be too dissimilar,
Yeah.
but you're gonna cancel out a lot of deep strike stuff because of the 9 inches. You're gonna I don't know. You're going to start clustering units toward the middle of the board because that's where everyone has to go if you want your victory points.
Hmm.
So I think it's going to be a really cool kind of way to play, just sort of almost like a battle royale, sort of last man standing
Yeah,
sort of situation. So I like that a lot. I did read through that AOS, the Battle of the Black Skies,
yeah, the
and
scenario.
yeah, I'll let you talk about that
Oh my
scenario because
gosh. I you know, I
it's
and
so awesome.
we play a lot of 40K. That's
Hmm.
our primary. Play a ton of 40K. But the Age of Sigmar scenarios continue to just really entice me to want to play Age of Sigmar. And this one is no different. And it features Nagash versus Archaon. And the cool part of this is that the whole purpose of this scenario that they put in here is to get those two behemoth models to fight each other. And so think
Hmm.
about, Godzilla, King Kong kind of situation, but they build in a game mechanic into the scenario so that
Yeah.
you got to get them to clash, you got to get them to run together, and if they're within a certain distance from each other, then any units that are close. So think about the two models within 6 inches or so, and any models that are within proximity are required to move out of the way so
Hmm.
that like that's a game mechanic. You got to move them. I think it was like 3 to 6 inches. You got to move them away from the battle so that these two titans can clash, and that's the whole point of this scenario. So I this is a bit of a taste of what you can get from White Dwarf, but specifically in this bunker where you get these kind of cool scenarios that, if you're doing combat patrol within 40K, or if you're doing a Path to Glory with Age of Sigmar, you got a cool flavor
Yeah.
text narrative, driven scenario that you can just say, hey, let's play the latest White Dwarf mission instead of the same old every single time. So highly recommend the bunker section that you give that a look if you pick up the latest issue. And then finally, one last thing before we move on to the next review here are the tear outs. They've been putting a lot of these nice glossy cardstock type tear outs within the magazine.
Hmm.
And this month they have a really cool 40K rules reference. So they came out with those with the last issue 490. Really cool reference. This one has now some additional rules, and it's got stuff for Deadly Demise. So there's just a single page front and back, all color.
Hmm.
And what we've started doing is just taking the printouts and putting them on the table so that you don't. It's one less book you have to have.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to look up the app. So, oh yeah, what does rapid fire do? What are extra attacks? What a feel no pain? And a lot of the stuff you probably already know, but there's some cool things in here about, okay, how does firing deck work? Do I get an extra AP? How does that work? So,
Hmm.
I really like the fact that these are just thrown in there and you can tear them out, and it's an instant supplement to your game.
Yeah, and you have all all the ignores cover and precision. I mean, there was just so much. It was missing from that last tear out.
Yeah,
It's the last few things that I always had to thumb through and kind of find extra.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, this issue is great. It's at store shelves. Highly recommend you hit your friendly local game store to pick it up. And I've never been disappointed with the
Hmm.
White Dwarf issue. This one's no different. So head out and pick it up. There's some cool stuff in it. Well, let's also now talk about a review, Steve, that you wrote on a one of our wonderful websites that we follow, Warhammer blogs, Goonhammer, Goonhammer.com. They have a dedicated app, Goonhammer Tabletop Battles app. And Steve, you kind of turned me onto this one, and I'm like, oh wow, this
Hmm.
is really cool. Downloaded it, used it for a couple of games, but this app is a way to digitally, of course, track your scores, the command points, objectives, missions, secondaries, all that stuff all in one app. So it's pretty cool. And Steve, I know you got to use it recently in a game.
Yeah, I was. I was playing with my buddy Steve, and he hadn't played anything in 10th. So we were like, let's just do some combat patrol. Because that was the last thing you and I had done. So it was fresh in my mind. It was just going to be easier to kind of help each other with the rules if we started with something that one of us have already done. So I set out on a goal, because we had discussed it before, of just trying to use the Warhammer app. I was like, I want to use just the app for one game, and let's see if I can get through the whole game. And then I found this. Well, actually, I think you turned me on to it a while back, but we didn't do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I need to look at that again. And I looked at it, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's got terrain layout. It has all your secondaries.
Yeah.
It tracks everything, because we've been using those little trays that I printed out and putting dice on them and stuff, which works actually.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, this has got some legs to it, you know. So I set out, and ironically, this pullout that we just talked about was the only thing that I had to look through the book for. These extra rules reference stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this pullout sheet, and the other pullout sheet that we had, um, I I was able to I would totally able to make it through the game digitally, plus with these few little reference cards. So I
Right.
would have had a tablet. I had basically my tablet and these. I had the book open to these extra things that aren't on those quick reference guides, but are now. Um, and I had my phone. I put the Goonhammer app on my phone, just so that I kind of set it off near the a center spot on the table, so that we could both see it. And then I used the app on my tablet for my army stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just so blown away, so impressed. But mostly for me, because the terrain setup, all the missions that are in the combat patrol stuff, everything is lined out for you. And it was like setting up a boarding patrol game. You know, in your books, it tells you where to put the walls and everything else. It didn't specify what kind of terrain you had to use, but it was kind of obvious. You want some L's here, you want some, obscuring terrain here. Um, but it just made it so easy. And
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, wow, this is really what the Warhammer Plus app should be.
Well, yeah, and that's what, we had talked about that. I did this tabletop battles app. I mean, the competition's good, right? Especially when it's
Hmm.
free.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
this is a portable way to, if you're going to go to a game store, go to a friend's house, and obviously we have a little whiteboard at my house where we track
Hmm.
stuff, and that obviously that works fine. But I was thinking about if you take this and put it on a tablet and stick it in the middle of the table, and you can track the entire. It is a scoreboard, right? It's a scoreboard for the
Yeah,
game, but it also gives you all the layouts and secondary missions and everything, and it really speeds things up. To me, it gives you a real quick way to score your secondaries if you're playing those. When we were playing Combat Patrol, and it was okay, it's the end of a round, and I need
hmm,
to go in here and I need to score points, and you click on the secondary that you have, and then it has details about how many points you get, how to score
yeah.
them, and you just click, and there you go, you got your points. Is it a required thing to have in order to play a game? No, it's not at all. But it is definitely something that I think is a supplement to the game, makes it more enjoyable. But to your point, allows you to digitally take your Warhammer rules and stats and all that kind of stuff with you.
Well, and there's reminders too, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of little secondary things that Steve and I both missed. And I went back after the game. I was like, oh wow, this it popped up, but I just didn't see it during the game. I was like, oh no, he got these points, because they're like maybe 2 points for this, 3 points for that. They're sort of faction specific things,
Hmm.
and it didn't change the outcome of the game, but it tightened the score up. So that was very unique, because we would have both missed those points, because we were playing them. So you might as well get them, right?
Yeah.
And I thought it was really cool. Every time you went to a new battle round, it tell you take pictures. And I thought,
Yeah.
okay,
That's
whatever.
cool.
But I thought, dude, we write articles. We send each other. Well, I mean, we send each other texts. We do
Yep.
social
Yep.
media stuff. I was like, all right, that's brilliant. I mean, it seemed so innocuous and kind of goofy at the time. I was like, no, that's really brilliant, man.
Yeah, not at all. Because
It's just
one of the biggest challenges of playing Warhammer, especially as an an older gentleman, as we are, is just remembering everything. And
yeah.
this is an easy button for that. Puts it all in front of you, makes it all big buttons to hit, and reminders to take pictures, because we always say pictures or it didn't happen, but
Mm-hmm.
the pictures of Warhammer battles, especially if you've got some cool terrain, a nice battle mat, and stuff like that, all the miniatures are painted. Really cool looking stuff. I highly recommend the Goonhammer Tabletop Battles app, especially if you are traveling anywhere and you need a way to score things and you don't want to have to mess with pen and paper and stuff like that. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
really cool app. Definitely check it out. Free on Android and the Apple Play Store. All right, let's wrap up our show here with a hobby hack, and this is a really simple thing. And Steve, you told me about this, and I think what's hilarious is that we're forever finding these little ways to make things easier, but a lot of times it just comes from just random stuff laying around the house that our kids have that we find. And, as we're walking by it, half the time I see some kind of random toy or piece of cardboard or trash or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I pass it and then I come back, I do a double take and I'm like, hey, I wonder if I could use that for something else. So
Yeah.
you found something that can be used as a paint palette. Why don't you tell us about what you found?
So I follow Tabletop Minions on YouTube. Uncle Adam. I think I like his content. He has a very like down to earth sort of keep it simple
Hmm.
kind of method of doing things, methods of painting, and he does a lot more than just Warhammer stuff. So he does a lot of different kind of tabletop games in addition to Warhammer products and stuff. But every once in a while, he'll throw out these sage like nuggets that you're like, oh my God, why didn't I think about that?
Hmm.
And it's the little poppet, the fidget toys that I guess, as he describes, simulate bubble wrap. You
Yeah.
just pop them and pop. I don't know how if they're
Silicone, like a little
yeah,
silicone thing. Yeah.
and they're little wells about about a fingertip deep or whatever, and they're multiple. You can get them really big ones and everything else, or really small ones. And like you said, they're silicone, so the paint does not stick to silicone. So you could use this little guy, let the paint dry, pop it, and then just peel the paint off the other side. And I thought, oh man, I
Amazing.
can't believe, because I have all kinds of just I'll keep little lids from plastic containers and
Hmm.
stuff, because I don't. It's not a big deal with metallics. I don't really put them on the wet palette because I don't thin them up like I do my regular acrylics. So I almost put them on something solid, and then that way I feel like they separate really fast on the wet palette for me,
Hmm.
and I'm forever stirring them and stuff. So I feel like if I can put them on just some sort of dry palette, I can control the thinning of them or whatever, and I just use a little bit at a time. So I thought, man, these will be great for metallics. And then I thought, well, now you have contrast paints. You don't really use a contrast paint on a wet palette. So I feel like anything that you would not use your wet palette for, this is pretty perfect because you don't have to clean it. You just like pop it. It just falls off and flakes off and it's ready to go. And if your house is like mine, my kids have them everywhere. I think every birthday party they've ever been to, uh, they get another little one about the size of
Yeah.
an iPhone or
They
something.
give them out
I was
free
like,
now. I mean,
oh yeah,
they're all over the
everywhere.
place. Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's just brilliant. I sure wish I would have thought of that. But I firmly appreciate little things like that. And that's a freebie in my opinion, because if you have kids, you got to pop it somewhere in your house.
Hmm.
And I guarantee you they're not playing with it. And, and I
Yeah.
guarantee you can sneak in, grab it, and they'll never know.
Yeah, I mean, the little dad hammer hack is if
Oh
you
yeah.
see something of your children's that you think you might be able to use for something, and Warhammer related,
Hmm.
just take it from them, hide it for a little bit, wait about a week, and if they don't say anything, you're good, right?
Hey,
They don't even miss it.
no, found goods, buddy.
Yeah. So what I think is cool about this too is that I'm wondering, I've got a wet palette. I use that quite a bit and
Hmm.
for mixing paints and stuff. But eventually my the piece of paper or whatever you want to call it
Yeah.
that's on top of the wet palette gets so messed up, and you have to throw it away. So this silicone solution, because it's such a contained little section, right? These little bitty,
Yeah.
fingertip size things where you can mix and match paint, and then if for whatever reason you don't like it or you mess it up, you just move on to the next one. You don't
Yeah.
you don't have to
Exactly.
worry about you don't necessarily have to worry about cleaning it up either. And even better is that a lot of those things, at least the ones that I've seen, are in the shape of some kind of octagon or square or
Hmm.
something, and they've got a pretty healthy ridge on the end of them. So if you put them on a surface, you're not going to tip it over. And even if you do, the amount of paint in those little things is so small that the
Right.
cleanup is going to be minimal.
Yeah. I mean, I have those other, and you've seen them. They're round, and they have dished out circles all the way around them. They're cheap. They're like $1 a piece on Amazon or whatever. I've had those. If you don't wipe that paint out before it dries, it's there.
Yeah.
It's not coming off.
Yeah.
It's just hard plastic. I usually have gone back and I have several layers of primer on them because I'll just let it all dry and then I'll hit it with some primer just to cover it up,
Right.
and I kind of
Right.
start fresh. But after a while, that gets a little frustrating too because you're like, I'm kind of wasting spray paint now, and then you just quit using them. I've got a drawer with probably 3 or 4 of them that I don't even use anymore. So we'll
Yeah.
give these jokers a try and see what happens. And I don't know. I got some faith in it. Looks pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm typically someone who doesn't use I really don't do a lot of like the cheap hobby hacks
Mm-hmm.
personally, but there are certain products that I remember walking into the store, the Games Workshop store, and I was saying, I've only tipped over one bottle of paint one time, and I know maybe in the
Yeah.
minority there, but I've only tipped it over one time. But as soon as I said it, I was handed, Games Workshop makes a little like a three paint
Oh
pot
yeah.
kind of holder thing, and he handed that to
Mm-hmm.
me. It's like, here, you should get this, and I mean that's cool, but I don't know if it's not every single product that they sell is going to be necessary. You could
That's right.
put, I mean, if you really wanted to ensure that you don't tip something over, there's all kinds of different solutions that you could put in there and do something cheap, do something easy. But I would say that this pop it fidget toy thing, whatever it um, is it's almost like it's just made for this purpose. And
They just didn't know it.
yeah, they didn't know that they had a Warhammer nerd demographic when they were giving them out to all these kids. But yeah, I love this hack. I love that it's something very, very cheap that most, especially parents, will likely have around the house. And anybody listening to this is, just stop what you're doing, wait for your kids to maybe fall asleep, and go rummage through the toy bin and see if you can find one of these things. Because I guarantee if they are of a certain age, they've been to a birthday party and gotten these for a party gift, and or gone to Chuck E. Cheese, and they spent 9,000 tickets on a little bitty thing like this. You're going to have them around the house. Go check it out, go use it, and I think it's going to be something you're going to really benefit from for your Warhammer hobby.
Yeah, and if you don't, I'm pretty sure I can fill a grocery sack full in my house. And if you
Donations.
just get on the website, we can work something out as a trade.
Yeah, help Steve out. He's trying to get rid of some stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that will wrap our show for this episode of Bolters and Booze. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Medicae Steve, for your time, attention, and your service. I hope you enjoyed your super lame bourbon drink. Mine, my GTO, my Sigmar, held and hammered. That's a mouthful, but
That's a good name.
yeah, it's all gone. It was very, very delicious. I look forward to your drink next time. Maybe I'll have the lame drink next episode.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening. I am the Warboss, and we will see you next time on Dad Hammer. Cheers, Steve.
Cheers, baby.